dear participants, hello once more. I have for you another subject matter expert, and this person is called Ashwin Pasricha. Ashwin is the founder, executive coach, and interventionist at Human Network and Associates, which is a firm that specializes in leadership development, executive coaching, talent assessment and development, and a lot of customized OD, organization development interventions. So for all of you budding consultants, he will bring to you a lot of his journey over the last 15 years. He has a total of 30 years of corporate and consulting experience. His last working assignment in organizations was with Vodafone, where he was heading the learning and development function. And he quit that to follow his passion and to follow his purpose in life, his ikigai, as we talk about. And he is very, very passionate about aligning people development strategy with business goals and objectives. He is also good at quantifying the ROI, return on investment, on human capital development. So Ashwin, welcome to our All India Management Association Advanced Certificate Program in Business Consulting. And we have an audience of people, full of people and participants who wish to take the plunge into and setting up their own consulting practice. They all want to be successful. They all want to be profitable. They all have great dreams as they're on this threshold. There are many unknown challenges, and we hope that our conversation will bring to them some of the joys and the trials and tribulations of what it means to be a business consultant.
Thank you, Aneeta. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure indeed to be interviewed by you. And yes, look forward to making some sort of a meaningful contribution. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ashwin. Now, the first question is, and everybody's question is, why should we start a consulting practice? When I'm in a corporate job, in a corporate role, I'm getting a salary, I've got perks. Why do I want to start and venture out on my own? So what was your reason?
So if I look back on my journey, I think basically it boils down to a couple of things in terms of how are you wired internally. So when I look back on my career, and that spans hospitality, ITS, IT, and then telecom, I think I had some sort of I could say an entrepreneurial spirit, or we call it intrapreneurship. So you can be an entrepreneur in the business; it's called entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I had that streak in me where I think it comes from within, where you really want to challenge the status quo and you want to, make things happen. And throughout my stint in the industry, I managed to make a positive contribution, whether in business, because I started my career in a business role, then went on to human resources and training. So essentially, I look back, actually, I didn't look at it as two separate worlds, because I was actually wearing a consultant's hat, or a change catalyst hat, if you may like to call it that, within the organization. So it was a natural extension to me, and I didn't see it as two different worlds. I saw it as an expression of oneself, whether in the organization or outside. So it was a natural progression for me in one sense. So I guess you could say that it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. Yes, it's part of your journey. It's part of your journey in life,
Yeah.
And that's so true, because even in our sessions, we talk about what is our journey in life, what is my ikigai, and how consulting is a part of who I am, and not just some aspirational thing that I have in mind. It has to be anchored inside you, for sure.
Correct.
So within the HR domain, there are so many options that you could have chosen, but you chose your path. And how did you zero in on what will be your niche area and your practice domain?
So I think, certain experiences in life define you. And, they also give you certain insight in terms of where your true calling lies. So without getting too historic about it, so I just shared a couple of experiences which will give you an insight into why I chose, learning and development or training. And now we call it, of course, OD, coaching, leadership, and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, when I was in the hospitality industry, I was in operations, and we had, of course, responsibilities included achieving budgets, staffing, running operations, recruitment, marketing. and so on and so forth. So, as a young person, as a young professional in the industry, I got my first opportunity or independent charge of a food and beverage outlet. I was part of the Holiday Inn chain of hotels. And I had my task cut out because there were certain challenges, both in the business front, customer satisfaction, and we had a very strong union too. So you had to manage them as well. And there came a point in time when I actually felt like giving up, frankly. And it was one evening close to midnight when I was so close to quitting my job. I was so frustrated and angry. And just when I was thought that this would be the day, a inner voice spoke to me and said, you know what? If you want to quit, quit in your own terms, but not till you have turned this place around. And that was one defining moment in my life. So I chose to stay. And the next 12 months, I transformed that food and beverage outlet in terms of customer satisfaction, sales, and profitability. I mean, many times over. And then that didn't end there, because as I was relaxing one evening, after 13 months of hard work, my boss came and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "There's nothing more for me to do. I have managed to achieve every metric on earth." He said, "You know what? You're too young to get lazy. Herein lies the next assignment." So I went on to the Chinese restaurant, I transformed that, went on to the Indian restaurant, and then went on to actually also take charge of the newly opened coffee shop. So over 8 years, I transformed 4 outlets in terms of customer satisfaction, sales, and profitability. Now, this wouldn't have been possible if I didn't take a keen interest in people. And I realized that, leadership is about really understanding people, knowing where they're coming from, understanding their dreams, their hopes and aspirations, and really creating a context where they feel they're contributing to something far bigger. All this may sound theory to you, but I can give you some examples. For instance, I introduced a principle called sanction your own leave.
Sanction your
own leave. In a unionized environment, if you don't feel like coming to work, open a special register against your date, against your name, just mention L without informing anybody. Don't show up for work, I'll sign your leave card without asking you a question.
Okay.
And you know what? It worked like magic. 99% of the time, because there were certain rules and regulations and norms laid. So before you ask for leave, you check how we're doing on the budgets. You check the actual versus achieved. You check the staffing for the day, the peak load factor. To cut the story short, is about really empowering people. So actually, when I started seeing principles work in life, and this is coming from within, really, not from out of a textbook, I got more keenly interested in working with people, helping them in their journey. That sparked my interest in behavioral sciences. So I think the seeds were sown then when I realized that, yes, I can make a difference to people. And thereon started my journey, actually. So you could say that it started fairly early, but it took a long time for it to actually, start as a professionally managed business. Yes.
That was up to the point you took a plunge. And
Yeah.
there were times when,
Yeah.
you decided to take a plunge when, you were at the top of things,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
when there was nothing more left for you to learn, and, you already achieved whatever was to be achieved, and you'd already blazed a great course for yourself. But after you took the plunge, how has been the journey since then?
So, I would say that entrepreneurship is a more of a spiritual journey, because undoubtedly it'll make you philosophical in life. You can bet there's no two ways, or don't shying away from that. It's an inner journey, right? So I think an entrepreneurship, because to share with you, because I do a lot of work around entrepreneurship, and I have my own experiential understanding of what entrepreneurship is, and of course backed by research. I think fundamentally it's not so much about just doing starting a consulting practice or starting a company. It's something far more fundamental and more deeper at the core. It's about discovering who you are and who you're meant to be. And that means it can be a tad bit lonely, because giving up your title, giving up your position, and you have a calling card, and that opens doors for you, and suddenly you're nobody.
Yeah.
So it also puts you in a quandary, because then you have to go inwards and ask yourself, who am I really? Right? And more importantly, How do I get to where I want to? So initially, it's a lonely place. And when you're already starting a business, you will find that although many people, this is something which a lot of people say, there are very few people who will take a punt on you. And usually the natural tendency to reach out to people whom you have known while you were in the corporate world, and suddenly you find that no one takes your call. And you realize that strangers are willing to hear you out and support you in your journey. So it's very interesting that when you're starting off, you'll find that when I did, it was a sudden decision. So I never knew what sales is because I had sold in a captive environment, right? So I had to figure out what sales is, what is positioning, what is differentiation, what is marketing, and all experientially without reading a book. Because once you plunge into entrepreneurship, you don't have much time to go back to reading books and figuring out is there a
24/7, yes.
So I remember that my first assignment, I was talking to this person, and I won't say who, and he said, I can give you a course, you can do a training program on business etiquettes because you're from the hospitality industry. And I was looking at him and saying, you know what, this is not what I want to do. I want to do some hardcore, holy stuff. And he looked at me and said, this is best what I can do for you. So you know what, I took up that assignment and I did it. They liked it because obviously I had a background in hospitality. And then they gave me a national rollout on a program called Performance Appraisal Management Skills across the country. This is my first client. In fact, my second client was Axis Bank. So here I put my heart and soul into it. And of course, I got a standing ovation in many of the programs. And that sort of affirmed my faith in me. But the key thing is you'll have to start out with whatever comes your way and gradually find your way. I mean, I think that's the key, really, because you may have thought things through, but when you hit the market, things don't really translate on the ground as you would expect it to. So you have to refine your product, you have to refine your solution, and kind of adjust your vision to what really the market needs. That kind of thing. Yeah.
It's all about traveling the path and
Yeah.
get more and more sure about your direction and more aligned with yourself internally.
Yeah.
But like you said, independent consulting is a completely different ball game as an entrepreneur. So is that something that everybody can do, be an independent consultant? Because there are lots of people out there who think they can, but many of them, they try for a few years and then go back to job roles. Is it something you would recommend for everybody? But if not, then what are the kind of people you feel should consider to be independent consultants?
So first thing I would say is that there is a myth out there that consulting is it is very glamorous. Sure enough, it is. There was a time when I was traveling, I think 260 days out of 365 days in a year, and I was changing flights left, right, center. There came a moment in my life I was at Delhi airport, and I had a brain freeze. I didn't know where I was and where I was going. And then I kind of searched in my pockets desperately and looked at the boarding pass and said, yes, I'm now in Delhi. From Delhi, I'm going to Calcutta. But you know what? It keeps you high. But let me tell you something. The important thing here is to really understand that it doesn't matter. What matters is wherever you are, what is the difference you would like to make? So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody. I think if you really want to step into entrepreneurship, irrespective of whether you have an entrepreneurial profile, you would need to take a hard look at yourself. For example, first is the way you are wired. So I'm a person who was very extremely structured. Yeah, I came from hospitality. In hospitality, everything is planned to the T, you name it, right? For obvious reasons. A structured person all my life, and that's when I was called kind of a role model as far as execution was concerned. But nothing prepared me for entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship is about being comfortable, and you heard it, I know, be comfortable with ambiguity, be in the flow. You got to adapt to whatever comes your way. You can't be fixated on this is what I want. You got to be open to listening to people. You got to keep yourself aside for a moment and really see if you can connect to that person before you. There are going to be days where you're going to be in a high. There are going to be days which you're going to be slightly not so good for you. Okay, you need to know how to surf the waves, as I say it, which means that sometimes you're insanely on top of the world, and sometimes you don't feel so good about yourself. So here's a couple of things one needs to really look at. It's okay if I segue into that.
Yes, yes.
So what worked for me is that the fundamentals. Before you step into entrepreneurship or starting a company, you need to talk to a few people who have something meaningful to share with you. So it's important that you get some basics right. In the sense, you got to clip your credit card. You can't keep on using your card indiscriminately. You got to make sure that the basics are covered in terms of insurance, Mediclaim, and this is very important. What I'm saying to you,
Absolutely.
term insurance, Mediclaim. You need to have a savings buffer. You need to make sure that your family is provided for. And if all that is done, the basics are covered, then you have to make sure that you have a runway, because it's going to be some time before you hit the sweet spot. It doesn't happen overnight. For me, it did work to some advantage because the company I was working with, I gave them a 6 months notice.
Yes.
So I stayed back to build the team, to transition the team, and then I left. So as a result of that, I had good relations. So they gave me some business initially to begin with Vodafone. Then I had another friend. When he was starting out, I had helped him, so he supported me. And then pretty much I was then on my own. So the runway could be anything from 12 to 18 months before you actually get some sort of a feeling that, yes, you are hitting the sweet spot. And that's very early, in my opinion. If you do that, you're very lucky.
Yeah.
So I think fundamentally, it's about the way I look at my journey over 15 years. The first couple of years was, you know, exploring the unknown. The next few years were, finding my feet, and then was then, then taking flight. And then for a couple of years, that was it. And then I found that I needed to reinvent myself. So I had to kind of, slow down, build new skills and competencies, because innovation is the name of the game, right? So lucky for me, I had a background in behavioral sciences, ISABs. I'd done my, degree in psychology, done my MBA. I'd done some several certifications. So the part what I'm saying to you is you need to build on your skills ahead of time. That's important. And for that, you need to anticipate the future. And that's what worked for me. And I think one more is important, is that you have to have one quality or trait, which, in one sense, which propels you in a different orbit altogether. So my gift, I mean, at some point in time, you have to affirm yourself, right?
Right.
My gift is a gift of empathy, which I bring to all my clients, to all my coaching conversations. And that's the gift of empathy, which helped me to transform various businesses when I was in the business role. So you need to discover that one thing which you have, which no one does. Because it's not about empathy, it's the way you bring it or offer it to a person as a gift. That's also important. So that one thing which makes you unique. I think if you get that right and you get the fundamentals right and learn a bit about really in terms of, what are the hard nuts and bolts of the business, because you can be extremely gifted. But if you don't understand sales, you don't understand pricing, you don't understand positioning, you don't understand differentiation, you are going to have a hard time in the marketplace. So I think these are some things which also one needs to, dirty your hands, so to speak. Yeah.
So the business skills are the basis, and then what else you bring from your own inside, from your own being. And that's what I love, the word you use, gift, that
Yeah.
you give to your clients. And
Yeah.
and uh, and you also spoke about all the things you did to stay on trend,
Yeah.
like the certifications and all. I'm going to
Yeah.
include a link to your LinkedIn
Yeah.
resume, so people can look at all the
Yeah.
MBTI
Yeah.
and all the other certifications that
Yeah.
you have. Because one of the things we do is also look at how do we, as future consultants, in our participants as future consultants, how do they stay on trend? What would they be doing? What would be their journey to
Yeah.
keep themselves up to date and keep
Yeah.
themselves as knowledge workers? And I
So,
love the part about the gift, because each one of
yeah.
us does bring something unique on the table,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
comes from inside. So
There's only
that's
one
great.
point I would like to add to what you're saying, and that is,
Sure, sure,
you
sure.
know, although one of my talent themes is learner. So, the love for learning itself makes me really want to really explore new frontiers.
Yeah.
So, but this has happened over, because I had a inkling that this is what I would be doing. So I started, maybe I guess 10 years earlier than other people. So over the past 23 years, I've dabbled in most assessment tools, whether Hogan, whether Lumina, MBTI, DISC, or even done process work, group process work. But fundamentally, the point I'm raising is that at some point in time, you decide what's going to be your swan song, or what's going to be a sweet note, or what is it that you're going to specialize in, and what is it going to bring to the world. Because learning with no end in mind, in my opinion, is not very useful. So here's one principle I've adopted. So whatever I learn, I apply it. And once before if I do not apply it, I do not go to my next learning opportunity or goal. So that's the discipline I have. If you learn something, apply it in your life, see what difference it makes, work with your clients, and then move on to the next best thing. Because I find clients, consultants who enter the space get overwhelmed because they meet 10 other people and he says, I'm learning this, I'm learning that. But that doesn't matter, because if you go to the West, when you hobnob with the best in the business across the world, they have done one thing and have done it consistently for 20 years, and that's what makes them great. So you got to figure out that one or two things which is going to make you great. I think fundamentally it's about going deep and not only far and wide.
That's wonderful. That's great learning for our participants and a great insight for them as well. Because ultimately it's your niche and your special niche in which you exist as a professional. That's most important. But another thing that's very important is to me, a consultant's reputation is more important than his work. That's something that we always talk about. And the reputation comes from many things, including your branding, but more importantly, how you conduct yourself and what others are saying about you. So, do you agree with this? And how would you advise our participants on building a reputation that works for you?
I think very interesting what you're saying, because when I look at reputation and I look at this aspect about your work, I think the first fundamental thing is that both are interwoven. They are not, mutually exclusive.
True.
The second thing is, when you look at reputation, is a function of how you conduct yourself, your character, your ethos. So it's about really, the clients really experiencing how committed you are to making a difference. Because sometimes things will go well, sometimes things will not. But if you have really been there for the client and you're supported the client, and intent is clearly visible in terms of making a difference. And there have been times when I have really gone out of my way to do the extra mile, go the extra mile for the client, because I have that orientation. But as long as you are able to partner with the client in a way which makes a difference to him or her, I think fundamentally your reputation grows from that. Your work could be the entire could be a reflection of entire bouquet of products and services, thought leadership which you provide to the client to bring to the table. But I think fundamentally it's the way you come across as a person in flesh and blood. I think your approach, your style, the way, how do you demonstrate your commitment to a client, in terms of follow up. So here's the thing: when I coach my coaches, they can access me 24/7. It's an unspoken thing. I'll be there for you 24/7. And there are ways to do that. So fundamentally, it's about really going deep and asking yourself that what is my essence, and how do I want to bring that in a way which resonates with people around, the clients, your coaches, whatever. So I think it's both intertwined. And I think fundamentally one should not get caught up in this reputation thing is, it's about really being true to yourself. If you're true to yourself, you'll make a few wrong moves, but there'll be a few right moves as well. And hopefully people will look at all the right moves you made. So that's the way.
Everybody speaks for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And whatever they say reflects on who they are.
Absolutely.
So that's what carries you forward.
Yeah.
For sure. Yes. So that's wonderful. And I have one last question.
Yeah.
And that is, often we consultants who are independent, like myself, and including yourself, we work in collaboration and partnerships with other consultants, because sometimes, I get a job which is an assessment center. I can't do it alone. I collaborate with another consultant who will, senior person who will come on board and, bring the skills, a similar set of skills, a similar outlook, or even complementary set of skills and outlook on board. And sometimes I partner with them on their projects as well. So does this work for you? I mean, because I know many times I have crashed and burned with many of such partnerships. Many times I have succeeded in such partnerships. But how does it work for you? And what do you think some of the tips are on, when it works and when does it not work?
So I think it's a very good question. I think this is a challenge which most consultants grapple with, because when they start out, they want to look for collaborative opportunities, and that doesn't come easily. And somewhere along the way, I think it's a very individual thing, because way it's worked for me, what I've observed about myself, I work very well with very senior people. So they could be as senior than me, as old as me in terms of experience, or they could be even elder to me. So I work with senior people very well, because, you know, I vibe build with them intellectually and also resonate with them because their work ethos is. So for me, that has worked. Now, the second thing is it also worked for me with a few people whom I have known over many years. We have kind of grown together in one sense, and professionally, and they have their own consulting practice, and I have a huge regard in the work they do. They have a huge regard for me. There's a lot of bond homie and a lot of respect for each other. So those relationships have worked well. I think the kind which don't work well is when someone is trying to get you for a very tactical engagement, or you feel that you don't feel valued. You feel someone is trying to use you. And that's not a good feeling. So I think those relationships don't work well when you're being too transactional and tactical. So for me, the partnership approach, or working with people whom I have a high regard for, we respect each other, and there's mutual love and respect, that have really blossomed. But tactical transactional relationships for me have not worked, and I steered away from that. So I think the long answer short, to each his own. But what I've noticed that collaboration is important to grow as an individual, because if you look at any evolution of any science, it's only happened because two great minds have at some point in time, you know, interact with each other. So it's not possible to grow uh, individually. So it can't. This is not. This can be a individual sport, but can also. So I think to each his own. But I think there are merits to seeing what works for you. There's no recipe for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. When it has worked for me is when there has been some overlap of common perspectives. That's when it works for me. But I've been very often also stabbed in the back by synergistic partnerships when I trusted the other person, and in the spirit of partnership, I shared a lot of data and shared a lot of the client, and then there were some ways in which it kind of leaked out, and it didn't work for me, or it didn't work for the clients either. So that's when I burned my hands at times with such synergistic partnerships, and I can tell lots of stories on that as well. But yes, it has worked often, but there are some times when it doesn't work to establish such partnerships. So, Ashwin, any one last very short message you want to give to our participants, of this program?
So in entrepreneurship, there's one classic principle. I'll tell you a small anecdote.
Yeah.
So I have a obsession for books. So hopefully now I've gone to the digital part, but there was a time when I loved having the copy in the hand. So I was actually at Kerala in a resort, and I was doing some workshop. And in the evening, I went to this bookstore which was in the hotel, and I was looking at all the shelves. And there were one book which caught my attention, caught my eye.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was transfixed. And gradually I summoned the courage to pick the book from the shelf. And guess the title of the book said, "What's Next After Now?"
Yeah. There's always a next level. Always. Always.
Now,
That's what I tell my clients.
that book, the title of the book hit me so hard, I can't tell you. Of course, I bought the book. But you know what? That book transformed my life. Till today, I haven't read the book. Reading the title of the book, in fact, has
The title
transformed
is
my
enough.
life,
Title is
because every day, each day, I kid you not, once a day, at least, I ask myself, so what's next after now? And that's exactly what entrepreneurship is about. Nothing more, nothing less.
So one of the things that we do also is, we seed with our intentions. We look at what is our intention for the consulting practice.
Yeah, yeah.
And what is that intention that I'm come with here to this program, and what will I carry forward? And that intention is what, then we stay with until another intention may replace it. But
Yeah,
that intention is very powerful. And so like you, for your intention is, one is what's next, and what's your next level in your life beyond now. And the other key gift that you talked about was empathy.
yeah,
And those are two very important cornerstones, which in your journey as a consultant, you have traveled with those cornerstones with you. So it has been amazingly insightful, Ashwin, and I'm
Thank you.
so glad I had this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Embarking on this journey is not easy. And it's not, I always tell my participants, give yourself 3 years to establish yourself. Don't expect everything to start happening the next day. And the journeys that we begin in our classes, in our sessions, are journeys that you carry forward for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Journeys like who am I, and what is my intention, and what is my ikigai, and so many other journeys we begin in the class. And that is what carries you forward. And it's amazing, lovely insights. I'm very thrilled to have had the opportunity to bring this to my participants.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you on behalf of All India Management Association, on behalf of participants of this and future programs as well. I will keep showing this for future programs as well. And I hope this journey carries forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.